Hello, BigTube. Hello, friends. Welcome to Lizziefaye Loves Books. I'm Elizabeth, and this is going to be part 2 of my October wrap-up. If you missed part 1, that was where I talked about the Journey Through the Bible readathon and what I read for that. That was hosted by Katie from Paperbacks and Ponytails, and the majority of what I read for that was Christian fiction. It didn't have to be, and so in this video, I'm just going to quickly run through the few books that I read for that readathon that are not Christian fiction, and then talk about all of the other books that I read for the month. But before I get into that, let me just kind of give you my stats, because I neglected to do that in the first part of the video. I finished a total of 38 books. 24 of them were audiobooks, and 14 of them were print books. Of the genres, there were 9 mysteries, 3 biographies, 4 other nonfiction. I think all of those were Christian. I had 10 Christian fiction books, 1 poetry, 1 children's storybook, 1 middle grade book, but it was really 3 in 1, but I just counted as 1 on Goodreads. 2 general fiction books, and then 2 romance books, and 1 comic book collection. So that totaled 38 books. I got started on my 25 and 25 challenge. I listened to 8 books that were part of that collection. So I have 17 left to go, and I'm going to try to get all of those done in November. I may not make it. I have kind of, because I don't want to say I've gotten burned out on Christian fiction, because I really enjoyed most of what I've read, but because I did listen to quite a bit last month, and I have already gotten started and listened to several this month in November, I think I'm going to throw in one that's, some other genre, between every 2 or 3. There are some authors in my TBR this month that I have 2 or 3 books by, so I may kind of group those together, and then in between each group do something, listen to something that's not Christian fiction. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, if I don't finish it, that's fine. But I would like to for sure finish all 25 of those books before the end of the year. And then I also failed to mention book club. I listened to 4 different books because of book club. 2 were actually my book club books, but one of them was a third in a trilogy, so I listened to the other 2 in addition to the actual book club book. And those were kind of a combination of mystery and historical fiction. I did not include those in the genre groupings. Okay, so my favorite book of the month was Christian fiction, and also one of the books on my most anticipated Read to Zero author list, and it is My Beloved by Jen Karen. I've already talked about this in the last video, so I won't spend too much time now, but the Mitford series is my favorite series of all time, and this was wonderful. Absolutely loved it. And then my second favorite book of the month is not a Christian fiction book, but I did end up reading it at the end of the month, and I counted it for the readathon, and it was so good. Y'all are going to hear me talk a lot more about the Mossy Creek series as I continue to read the series. I own the first 5. It's a 9-book series, and I know that is going to be one of my all-time favorite series. And just to recap the books I already talked about that are not Christian fiction, but that I did count for prompts in the Journey Through the Bible readathon. The book I read with Emily, the ASPCA Kids Pet Rescue Club. This is 3 in 1, but I just counted it as 1 on Goodreads. We enjoyed that. The book I read with Fiona, Barefoot Beach by Debbie Mason. This is book 8, I believe, in the Harmony Harbor series. I did count this for read a physical book in the Journey Through the Bible readathon, even though it's not a Christian book. And also not a Christian book, but I counted this for the prompt to steal a book from someone's TBR, and I stole it from Storm's TBR, from Storm Reads The Poacher's Son by Paul Dworin. It wasn't a favorite, but it had been on my list. In fact, it was on my Series About Series list, because I wanted to read another one in that series. I had read one farther in the series, and so I wanted to go back and read the first one, and I did. And then this was one of my book club books, which I counted for librarian recommendation in the Journey Through the Bible readathon. I didn't love it. It was about art. It's just so far in the series that I would need to start at the beginning, and I'm not that interested in it, to be perfectly frank. So, A Death in Cornwall by Daniel Silva. Okay, now on to the books that I have not yet talked about this month. Well, some of them I probably did talk about in my mid-month wrap-up. I don't have physical copies of everything, so I'm going to need to refer to my Kindle where I have my Goodreads open so that I can share with you everything. So I had some cozy mysteries from the Campers and Criminals series by Tanya Kappas. If you remember, I skipped a couple of them to get to book 30, which was a book that started with Z at the end of September. So I went back then and I listened on October 1st. I listened to book 28, Trapping Turkeys and Thanksgiving. And then I listened to book 29, which was a Christmas themed book, Gifts, Glamping, and Glocks. And then I read on my Kindle a little short story that is 29.5 in the series called Brides, Bribes, and Binoculars. Then I went back and I listened to book 30 again, which is Zoning, Zealots, and Zip Lines. So that is a total of 4 titles in that series for the month of October. Then I finally got around to reading or listening to a book club book from September that I hadn't taken time to get to. It was How to Solve Your Own Murder by Kristen Perrin. I believe it's book 1 in the Castle Knoll files. This is probably not a series that I will pursue reading. It was okay, but it didn't blow me away, and I don't even really remember it enough to tell you about it. But, it was fine. I just am probably not going to read any more of the series unless, we end up picking up book 2 for book club in a future year. Okay, so then I had 3 audiobooks on Audible that were part of the Audible Plus package that were expiring soon. And I don't have physical copies of them. I would love to have a physical copy of this one. This 50 People Every Christian Should Know by Warren Wiersbe. It said in the intro that he wrote these little mini biographies for periodicals and things like that. And then later on, he put them all together in a book, and I think wrote a couple more that were just for this book. But when that came up, for whatever reason, because of some other things I had listened to on Audible, another one came up that's very similar by Michelle DeRusha, and it is 50 Women Every Christian Should Know. This one wasn't quite as compelling as the first one by Warren Wiersbe, but I enjoyed it, and there were some surprises that I would not have expected to be there. And both of these books were about people, mostly Christians, who had, some historical significance in the Christian faith in history. And so it was very interesting. Did I say I didn't have physical copies of all of these? Because I do have a physical copy of one of them. It's called Hershey by Michael D'Antonio. This is a biography of Milton Hershey, of course, the founder of the Hershey Candy Company and Hershey, Pennsylvania, and everything. I thought this was very interesting. It was a little slow at times. I got a little bogged down in it, but overall, I enjoyed it, and I thought it was very interesting. It also delves a little bit into Pennsylvania history in general, and the industrial era, the industrial age, and I thought it was very interesting. So I mentioned that I read a trilogy for book club. We were supposed to read Camino Ghosts by John Grisham, which is book 3 in a trilogy. I did eventually get to it, but first I listened to Camino Island. This is a story about an art theft. And then Camino Winds is a story that starts with a hurricane, and then a murder takes place during the hurricane. And so the rest of the book, they're trying to solve it. And then Camino Ghosts has a historical storyline, and it deals with slavery and people captured and escaping from slavery, and living on an island that now in present day someone wants to raise it and put condos and develop it, and the last living resident of that island is trying to prevent that from happening. She doesn't live on the island anymore because her and her mother were the last ones living there. They couldn't sustain life there by themselves, so they were encouraged to come and move into town and off the island, but she still wants to protect it because the graves of her ancestors are there and everything. So it's a very interesting story. Maybe not as compelling as some that I've read by John Grisham, but I still enjoyed it. I am so happy to say that I finished reading Gone for Gouda by Karina Moss in time for for the discussion of book 6. I read book 2, but it's fine. I was just glad that I had finally remembered to keep picking it up on my phone and read it. I had a phone change during the month, and so it took me a little while to kind of get transferred over and all of that. But I did finally read book 2 in the Cheese Shop Mysteries. I loved every page of it. I read it on ebook, and I definitely will read the rest of the series. I thought it was really, really good. I mentioned reading My Beloved, which was one of the 3 books by some Read to Zero authors that had books coming out this fall. I did a whole video about it. I had read the Fanny Flagg book, I think in September, and I read My Beloved, and I have also read The Girl from Devil's Lake by J.A. Jance. Now, of course, by read, I listened to them on audio, but this was excellent. The very first initial crime was very similar to another storyline that was in one of her other books. And at first I thought, have I read this before? But J.A. Jance has written a lot of books. And so I got to give grace, because it must be extremely hard to come up with completely different scenarios every single time. So I think she did kind of reuse one storyline initially, but it, branched out into something totally different from there. And I thought it was a very, very excellent book. I had a few Christian nonfiction books. One I read that I'm not going to talk about. I just kind of reviewed it, read it, because I wanted to give it to someone, and I wanted to make sure that it said what I wanted it to say. So I'll keep that one private. But I read one that my brother-in-law gave me right at the end of the month. It's called Beyond Coincidence by Dr. Chuck Missler. This is very sciencey, but I think all scientists should read this, because it just exposes the fact that there could not have been a chaotic Big Bang. Everything fits together so perfectly well that it had to have a designer. So I thought this was very, very good. Then I also, before I read that, I read book 14 of the Through the Bible with Les Feldick, and I still had like a week left when I got done with this, and so that's why I went ahead and picked up this one. And I read those as part of my devotional time. I also have 2-page-a-day devotional books that I've been reading all year, and then I have 2 that I've been reading with Emily all year. I have one other Christian fiction book that I listened to that I didn't talk about in my first video, because I didn't count it for any of the prompts for the Through the Bible readathon. But I did listen to it because of a book in my 25 by 25 collection. I have this book by Donna Fletcher Crowe called Elizabeth, and I picked that up at a book sale or something for obvious reasons. That's my name. And then I got it home and started looking at it, and it's the middle book of a trilogy. And the first book is called Catherine. And at first they didn't seem to be related, but actually Catherine is Elizabeth's mother. And I think the whole trilogy is on Audible Plus. So I went ahead and I listened to Catherine. And I had the plan to go ahead and listen to Elizabeth, but I wasn't using it for any of the prompts, and so I never ended up getting to it yet. So I still will listen to Elizabeth in November, but I did listen to Catherine. I don't have a physical copy of it. This is about a young lady who is a preacher's daughter, and her mother has died, and her father feels like he has a call to move out west and minister where there are no churches. And so she agrees to go with him. She's an adult, but she's an old maid or whatever, and it was very, very good. I did really enjoy it. All year long, I have started several books that I knew would take me longer than a month to read. I had planned to carry them over into future months. But then I started others that I ended up not finishing, even though I thought they wouldn't take me very long. So all year long, I've been carrying over quite a few more books from month to month than I'm really comfortable with. So I finally realized that I need to get going on some of these if I'm going to finish them by the end of the year. So I did end up finishing one that I started in July for the Retro Romance Readathon. This is an old romance book, an old Harlequin called The Texan Rancher by Jane Corey. This one was a little disappointing because it was originally published as a Mills and Boon in Europe, and it's probably a European author, and I don't think they really knew their Texas geography very well. And there were some words and terms that I just don't think Texans would have said. And, you know, the main character had been born in Texas, but then she had been 12 years in the UK and then came back. So it would be reasonable for her to say some things like a European would say, but not the rest of the people around her. Plus, at the very beginning of the book, I think on page 1, it talks about how she has just arrived back in this little town where she had grown up. And it says that this is a sleepy township tucked away in the furthermost part of East Texas. Okay, I'm somewhat familiar with parts of East Texas. I grew up in southeast Oklahoma, just north of East Texas. And this was set in, this was written in 1978. So there were quite a few larger towns in, you know, East Texas. There are still some that are quite small. But so it is very possible that there would be a sleepy little town in the furthermost reaches of East Texas. However, farther on in the book, she's talking about going into Dallas, and it says it's 40 miles from Dallas. Well, this person did not look up their Texas geography, because the furthermost part of East Texas is way more than 40 miles from Dallas. You can be in the center of Dallas and go 40 miles and you're still on the outskirts of Dallas. Okay. So no. Even in 1978, Dallas was huge, but still way more, but 40 miles outside of Dallas does not get you anywhere near the outskirts, farthermost parts of East Texas. So that bothered me a little bit. It's kind of like my friend Fiona was talking about a romance that she read a while back, and the title of it was something about the Highlands, but she's from Scotland. So, you know, she's reading this and she's like, this is not the Highlands. You know, it's Scotland, but it's not the Highlands. And so, yeah, I get it. It's frustrating when the people who write don't do the appropriate research to make it plausible. So that's all I'll say. And the book itself was a little disappointing too, because, and I think this happens in a lot of these older romances, the main male was just very bossy and not romantic at all. So you couldn't even really call this a romance. And it wasn't even clear that she even liked him until like the last chapter. So this, as a romance, this was not great. But anyway, it was fun to pick up one of these old Harlequins and read it. I hopefully will have a chance to read more, and hopefully the ones I read in the future will be better than this one. But anyway, it's okay. Then I finished an epic collection of comic books that I have been reading on my Kindle for quite some time. It is Star Wars, The Original Marvel Years, Volume 1, the very first comic books ever done regarding Star Wars. The first 6 issues were a retelling of the movie. I think the first couple of issues might have even come out before the movie was released. Then it goes on from there. There's some other storylines that were created regarding Han Solo and Luke and Leia and everything. I loved it. I thought it was so good. And then there were some other bonus materials at the end. I really want to read more. This volume 1 was on Kindle Unlimited, so I joined Kindle Unlimited just so I could get that. Sadly, though, the rest of them, the other volumes, are not on Kindle Unlimited, and they're not cheap. So I'm not sure how and when I will get to any more of those, but I'm happy that I did get to read that first Volume 1 epic collection of the Star Wars comic books. I read one children's storybook, and it is the 2025 Caldecott winner. I read this with Emily on the last day of October on Halloween morning, and this is called Chooch Helped. I didn't know till I opened it. This is a book about a Cherokee family. So not only is the artwork great, but there are some Cherokee words in here that you learn, and some other illustrations to represent different things in the Cherokee culture, and I thought it was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. Y'all know I am Choctaw, and Choctaws and Cherokees are, you know, very similar, and, you know, our areas of Oklahoma are, you know, close to each other and everything. And I think I might have a little Cherokee blood in me, maybe a teeny tiny bit. So I really love that. I thought that was really, really neat to read. And it's a good story about family dynamics. It's about a big sister who is just getting frustrated because her little brother Chooch just gets into everything. And the rest of the family call it helping, but she just is over it. You know, everything she tries to do, he, you know, wants to help and he messes it up and she's just frustrated. And so she has to kind of come to terms with being the big sister. Another ebook that I read on the last week of the month, because I finished my Star Wars comic book collection with about a week left in the month, and I like to open up my Kindle at least every day, once a day, and read a couple of pages of something. So I read High Seas Heist by Hope Callahan. This is book 10 in the Cruise Ship Mysteries. This is about Millie. She is an assistant cruise director on the Siren of the Seas, and she got a job on a cruise ship after her husband left her for another woman, and she kind of has to reinvent her life and do something different. And she has just been thriving on board this cruise ship and just really loves it. And so I am thoroughly enamored with the series. I worked on a cruise ship a long time ago, and I just love the series. It's pretty well done as far as what it's like to work on a cruise ship. Every time it talks about Millie going to her crew cabin, she's got a roommate and she talks about how small it is and everything. I visualize my crew cabin with my roommate, and she is spot on with that. And just other things about working on a cruise ship that I think are very, very well done. And I guess the only other one I haven't talked about was one that I listened to on CD, not because I needed to do it for a challenge or anything, but because I had read a lot of Elizabeth Berg books for my 60 by 60 challenge, and I realized that I had one other book by her that I could still get on CD, on audio CD from my library, and so I went ahead and listened to it. This was pretty good. It didn't blow me away, but it's called Dream When You're Feeling Blue, and it's about three sisters who are writing to young men who are soldiers in World War II. They go to dances and they try to, you know, do their part to keep up morale and things like that. And each of them are kind of at a different place in their life and different you know, different places in their romantic relationships and ages. One of them is still pretty young, and one of them is in a serious relationship, and one thinks she's in a serious relationship, but when her boyfriend goes off to war, things don't always turn out as hoped. But it was pretty good, and I did enjoy it, and I'm glad that I read it. I still have a couple more Elizabeth Berg books on my shelf that I can't find on audio anywhere, and I'm going to hang on to those and eventually work my way through them. But I'm glad that I have finished the ones that I finished, and now all of these are going in my eBay store in a couple of lots. I've got a paperback lot and a hardcover lot, and the Katie Nash trilogy that I read that I loved. I put all three of those together in one lot, and I'm getting all those listed on eBay. So anyway, I got this one done and I'm happy about it. So I think that's everything that I read in the month of October. If you'd missed part one, that is where I talked about all the Christian fiction that I read, and I read some really, really wonderful books. A few were not as good as the others, but I'm really happy with what I got read in the month of October. So that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. A couple of you have heard that I had a big surprise for my birthday, and you are waiting for me to share it. I chose not to reveal it on this video because it kind of goes along with another project that I'm already working on. So it will be revealed very soon, hopefully. Anyway, that's all I have for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a great day. Read a good book, and God bless you.